Well, temperatures are rising. The snow is beginning to melt outside, and that means the Nebraska Prep Zone Report is back. I'm your host, Dillon Adams, joined once again this week by Stu Pospisil and Mike Patterson. And guys, I'm still reeling after one of the craziest nights in NBA history. Where were you guys when two guys dropped 60 in the same night?
Asleep. I'm not an NBA person.
You guys missed that? I didn't know if
I
you.
didn't
Yeah,
I didn't even
I'm
go ahead,
not I'm
Mike.
not a big NBA guy either, but one of the guys played for the Timberwolves, right? They're kind of my
Yes. Yeah, it was the first time since 1978 that two guys went for 60 plus on the same night. Back then, it was David Thompson and George Gervin. So it's been a while.
Hey, I even missed the North Carolina Wake Forest game last night. After watching about 8 games over the weekend just in basketball and then some football, I don't care.
Yeah, I understand that. You took the Monday night off. I get that. So, well, I digress. This is not an NBA podcast. This is a
Oh,
Nebraska
thank
high school
goodness.
sports podcast. So, we took a week off, guys, after that, horrific snowstorm, 20, 30 below wind chills, knocked out pretty much all of our action and even hindered the inaugural Martin Luther King Classic over in Council Bluffs, along with a weird NSAA bylaw. We're going to get to that later. We also had Stu, your latest columns about the shot clock implementation and changes likely coming to the Nebraska State Wrestling Championships. But we got to start with that Nebraska Prep Classic that you were at, Stu, for all 8 of those games. Like you said, we touted Saturday night as probably the best girls doubleheader we're going to see until state. And for the most part, I think it lived up to the hype, right? Especially that second game.
Oh yeah, and there was a nice sized crowd there. Again, it was bitterly cold, but it was more than half full, and I think Creighton holds 2,300. So, 1,200,
Yeah.
1,300. You had the number 15 team in the country coming in, and you had one of the top 20, 30 in the class of 2024, Britt Prince. So what wasn't to love about that matchup? And
Yeah.
the first game, Millard West tried to stay in it, was down 2 at the half, and then got only 1 bucket to go in the third quarter. The rest of their scoring came from the line. And Johnson, Iowa, is as good a team as I've seen come in, be here in the state or come in. Um, they've got a lot of pieces. They've got 2 for sure. Power 6 kids moving on. Looks like there's more, in the pipeline there. And Millard West just could not hit from the outside in the second half, and they shut down the Gesser twins pretty good, Nora and Neely, and Taylor Hansen, I think, had 11, and each of the Gesserts was in double digits too. But that only gets you to 51, and Johnson put up 75. So I don't see how they don't win a third consecutive Iowa State title. And again, they needed games. You get to be that good, and teams won't play you. And this was a game that got worked out over the spring and summer. Kudos to Mark Kruger from Millard West, and Chad uh, Jilek, Jilek from Johnstown, working with Tom Crable to get that put together. And then, you know, the and we had a couple good overtime games during that day, but Millard North and Elkhorn North, 66-63. Uh, Millard North hit a 3 with a second left to make it as close as it was. But Millard North made 11 threes to counteract Britt Prince, who's double you don't see very often. 19 points, 11 assists, 7 boards, and with Millard North tried the unusual strategy of double and sometimes shadowing a third on Britt, and that's going to leave girls open teammates, and for the most part, they connected.
Yeah, it was one of the probably the first time in a while that she didn't lead her team in scoring, Britt. But I believe it was Murphy, right, that led the team. She was hitting
Right.
some shots from outside, and she's a
Well, again,
Colorado State recruit. So
uh, Mike, are they like 1-2 in Class B scoring or thereabouts?
I'm doing the stats again this week, but I'm thinking, well, of course, Britt's number one in the whole state overall in scoring, and I think Murphy is not very far. Well, she's far behind Britt, but I know she's
Right.
probably top five. So
Well, and
yeah,
here's the thing with Britt. I think the last time she led every Class B category that we keep, 6 categories, 6 leaderships. I mean, that talk about all
yeah.
around skill.
And that doesn't even mention her defense. So
Right.
yeah, just a generational player, and we've talked about her a lot, and we're going to talk about her even more the rest of the season.
Well, and it was a good showcase for her for Elkhorn North against a good Class A team that was number 2 versus number 3 in the top 10 overall. And I'm not sure, does Elkhorn North have another challenge between now and say a state final against?
Well,
Do they
they
get
play
North?
at Waverly. They play at Waverly. They play Norris. They play Elkhorn South. That'll be their last Class A game. So realistically, their toughest tests are behind them.
Yeah, and until they get to state in a possible rematch again against a Norris or a Waverly or you know
Scott.
Scott,
Yep.
you would think that's still we got to have that penciled in as the state final.
Yep. Again. So Elkhorn North handled them easily the first time. We were both there for that. If it comes down to that, we'll see if they can do it again.
Well, and you would think that Kip Colony and Scott would have maybe some hints on what to do defensively, and maybe they saved a little bit, especially once she caught fire in the third quarter of that game. I would think that they would try and double team her and maybe shadow with the third in the state final because they've
Right.
got the athletes to do it,
Right.
like Millard North did.
And as we saw that night, Britt can just take over a game. She did that in the third quarter. So,
Yeah,
a
and
lot of
she didn't
people,
she
a
didn't
lot of,
shoot nearly as well against Millard North with the balls, kind of rattling out. She was a little cold early,
mhm.
missed, had a three throw go in and out, and then she barely caught the rim on the second one. I don't know what happened there. It
Yeah.
was like maybe a little
Well,
frustration, but good second half for sure.
she's only human, but yeah,
We forget
like you
that
said,
sometimes.
she can take over a game, and we'll see what happens with the Wolves the rest of the way.
yeah, I think that was good for her to just see that different type of defense, right? To see that Class A defense. It's something that she's probably going to face in college next year, not even just as she finishes up her senior year here. So,
Well, I hope
um,
she does a better job acting than Caitlin Clark did when the court got stormed.
Oh boy.
here we go.
Had to throw it in there sometime. I just saw the video and what a poor acting job. Well,
Oh
she
You
might
yeah,
say,
might have a future in the NBA for
right.
acting.
Yeah, the reaction on social media after that game is a lot different now. Now that the reverse angle has showed
mm,
up on Twitter and other forms of social media, it's a little different angle for sure. We'll just keep it at that. But
A flop.
it was a little bit of a flail, and we're just glad that she's not hurt, I guess. So we can move on from
Well, it would
that.
have been her own flop that hurt her.
Right.
She cushioned the blow pretty well because she was spun at least once.
Yeah. Yeah. So if our listeners want to check that out, I'm sure they could find it on Twitter. It's floating around out there somewhere. So, but a couple weeks back we had the big conversation about keeping the Wildcats at number one and PAT. They're there again for you this week. If you want to go ahead and explain why you kept them up there.
right. Well, Stu mentioned how good that Johnston team is. They're ranked
Yes.
15th nationally. They're number one in Iowa in the biggest class. So they're obviously better than probably any team here in Nebraska. So I wasn't going to penalize Millard West for that. And unfortunately, Millard West and Elkhorn North aren't going to play each other this year. They're still very close. And all we have is comparing scores of common opponents, and I don't really like to do that. But when you do that, Millard West has the edge, and Elkhorn North still has to play Elkhorn South. Millard West handled them very easily twice, so I guess we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that. But there's no guarantee either of these teams. I have to like Elkhorn North's chances of going through undefeated more than Millard West not losing again. They've got a tough game tonight against Lincoln Southwest, so we'll see if the Wildcats can keep it going.
Yeah, that will be a tough one. So, no, and I like that you say that. You don't like to compare the similar opponents, but it was a nice thing that they're both on a neutral floor. Both of those Miller North games. This one at Sokol for Elkhorn North, and then the other one was at the Metro tournament, right? So,
Right.
Well,
Right.
I've seen Miller North girls a couple times. I had not seen them shoot the three the way they did against Elkhorn North. Made 11 threes.
yeah, that's really hot shooting for sure.
And
And
in a
Millard North has a lot of depth. They could throw a lot of players out there and do a lot of different things to try to limit Britt Prince, and so they weren't getting worn down that way. So yeah, I think Millard North did pose a really strong challenge against Elkhorn North, but yeah, the Wolves did prevail.
and Miller North played 11, I believe, that night.
Yep,
Wow,
that's pretty much par for the course. They
really.
played just about everybody.
I think that's kind of the overarching theme of this year's high school basketball season, boys and girls, is the 3-point shooting. I think the latest stats that you posted, Stu, weren't there like 5 or 6 kids shooting over 50% from three? like
Yeah,
like
I mean we're at the halfway point, and
right. Yeah,
you
and
know,
they're still shooting that well. And it's not like they're only taking 2 or 3 a game. Some of these kids are taking 4 or 5 and still
mhm.
hitting at that high of a percentage. So really impressive.
That is impressive. Over 50% from long range.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
So
So,
no, and
well,
then
let's talk a little bit about the first event of last week and
yeah,
the snow and cold limited MLK Classic over at Council Bluffs Abraham Lincoln. I went over expecting to see 3 games that mattered, and it ended up being one.
yeah,
What happened was that J.J. Isaacson, the Council Bluffs Abraham Lincoln coach, and Jeff Novotny, um, the AD over there, former Bellevue East cross country star of the around 1990, I think it was his graduation year, so familiar with him. They put together this nice event, and then the snow and the cold, and teams weren't coming in, so they tried to shuffle and reshuffle to get games for Millard South and Millard North and Bellevue West. And the NSAA has a rule that once you set your schedule, you can't change it. Now, I would argue that you're setting the schedule that you're in a showcase event
yes.
uh, and you have weather conditions. The third party is making the decisions and not the school saying, okay, we're changing our schedule so that we play a lesser team rather than a good team.
Hmm.
And I know that the Class A athletic directors are not happy about what happened and will probably bring a proposal off the floor at the Representative Assembly to try and remedy that. And it only makes sense, And I remember, and I wrote about it back in 2006, 2007. We had a couple of real sharpshooters. We had Wes Eichmeyer at Fremont Bergen, who went over at Iowa State, and then went to Colorado State, where he ended up with Jesse Carr, who was from Ainsworth, when Carter Nelson was just about 2 years old, just for reference.
Yeah.
And they wanted to match up Fremont Bergen and Ainsworth in what was an Omaha shootout down at CHI in its early years. And it was a St. Louis promoter doing this, and the NSAA said, no, you can't have that game. Your schedule's locked already. And again, it's kind of like, and I don't know, maybe that wouldn't have happened now because I think the NSAA is a little more relaxed but
Sure.
not in this case. And I think the rule needs to change, especially when it's a decision of a third party and not the school or schools themselves. So we ended up only with Westside playing Rockford Auburn High School out of Illinois. Rockford doesn't even have, well, Illinois doesn't have the shot clock yet. And
Oh,
that'll be our segue into the next topic. But so they were playing with the shot clock for a rare time, and Westside was able to have a nice win. I think it was 75-62 or something like that. And, Rockford had, I would say, two go-to shooters, and the other three were okay. Westside really, you got to cover all five. Caleb Benning is probably the defensive specialist in the starting rotation, and doesn't look to score the way Kevin Stubblefield or C.J. Mitchell or Ricky Lofton and Oddbody will. But Westside's got a good game tonight. They're going to host Miller North, and that's a number 2 versus number 3 for us.
yeah, that is a good game. And then we have Thursday, that we have Creighton Prep hosting Bell West. Is that correct?
Bell West goes.
Bell
You're
West.
absolutely. Yeah, Prep goes to Bellevue West.
Okay. Yep, that's right. And Prep is kind of our big climber this week in the rankings. They're up to the top
Number
five.
5.
Yep.
And Josh Lukey, their coach, got his 400th win. He's the dean of the Metro coaches, which kind of hard to fathom that, because I still think of him as young, and he's class of 90, so he's like 52 now. But yeah, I mean, he's averaging about 20 wins a year.
Yeah, I think you said just his 21st year this year, and that was way faster to get to 400 than the other two guys that did it, right?
Right.
So
I actually, what I did the other day, because I was a little bored, but not bad. I worked out percentages, and he's winning a 73% clip.
mm, oh my God.
You take a look at the list. I'm going to probably have to do a story on this at some point. Kyle Jurgens from Omaha Skutt, 83%.
Wow.
Eric Barons finished at Central at 82%, which for Class A, that's just incredible.
Yes.
Doug Goltz, the career leader in wins down at Falls City Sacred Heart, 78 or 79%. Eric Kessler over at St. Francis and Humphrey, 77%. Jim Weeks, who just got number 600 last week, 76%. So you've got, just you win anything over and we're talking high schools. You can't control your lineup a lot of years. The good coaches, we have about 90 through the years that have won more than 2/3 of their games.
Mm. That's just like an automatic 20-win season, which is just not easy to do at all.
No,
So yeah.
no. And, there were people who really doubted Josh, who never played varsity basketball at Prep, if what type of coach he'd be. And, with 3 state titles, and he's been our coach of the year, and, and he's had good assistants to help, and still does. He's had 2 spin-off just recently. Nick Thompson's over at Elkhorn High, and Andy King's at Elkhorn North, and their programs are becoming very successful. So, just hats off to Josh. Good guy, easy to work with, in the media. And I actually had to live next door to him for 9 months when he was in his aunt's house many years ago, and that was quite interesting, but a good time.
Dylan, you mentioned Prep playing at Bellevue West. Marion is going to be playing at Bellevue West before that game, and Marion coach Tom Taverdi, who was a longtime coach at Seward, he'll be going after career win number 500 on Thursday night. So there's another possible milestone coming up.
Wow. Yeah, I saw that you mentioned that in your latest column, PAT, about the Sydney coach notching 300, and you said more were on the way. So
Right.
that's one to watch there.
Yep, led by Taverdi. Like I said, most of his wins came at Seward. They
Mm.
strung together 100+ wins during their great 4-year dynasty. So that was a little before your time here in Omaha, Dylan. But
Yeah.
yeah, Tom Taverdi, another really solid high school coach out there.
So just a
I was
couple
just
quick.
looking real quick, guys. One more thing on that subject. With his next win, Eric Kessler, aforementioned from Humphrey St. Francis, he gets to 400.
Mm,
And St. Francis, this is their last year before the Archdiocese reformats them with Lindsay Holy Family and starts a new school and I guess new tradition, new nickname.
really?
So the Lindsay Holy Family Bulldogs and Humphrey St. Francis Flyers will be just a memory in the coming years.
Yeah, that's really hard to believe, Stu. I was up in Humphrey. Was it last year when 3 of the 4 teams,
Right.
either from Humphrey High or Humphrey St. Francis, were going to state? And to walk into that Humphrey St. Francis gym and see all those banners hanging and trophies in their trophy case and so much school pride there, that's really going to be a drastic change from what we've known as far as that school and its athletic success over the years.
I don't know if that's right or not. Again, I'm not paying the bills there, but you know, Holy Family hasn't been on its own as a athletic team. They've been with Humphrey High.
Right.
Again, Humphrey and Humphrey St. Francis are catty corner buildings in Humphrey, but Humphrey went with Holy Family, or Holy Family went with Humphrey out of necessity. You know, I don't know why you just can't blend Holy Family into to St. Francis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure myself.
Tons of history up there for sure, it sounds like.
Well,
So,
and both schools have history, but again, Holy Family hasn't had the numbers for years,
mm,
you know, so it's not like they're shutting down their athletic teams. Their standalone program's been gone for quite a while.
hmm.
Mull that
Well,
over.
we have that to consider for next year. But if we want to go into, I just had a couple quick notes here on the latest rankings from you guys. We had Papio South on the girls' side. They're the hottest team, moving up to they went unranked number 6 in Class A. They've won 6 in a row. But the boys' side, they have lost 3 in a row. They're down to number 8 on the boys' rankings.
Yeah, and they're playing good teams. They
Yes.
took Central to overtime. They lost by 5 the next night to West Side. Their first 2 losses were by 2 points apiece. You know, the Papio South is a team that for sure is going to be a state contender next year. I think they can get to state this year. This would be kind of a bonus year. But yeah, Bryson Ball, Jordy's brother, I think got a UNO offer
Mm.
in the past week. And but the Metro's tough. You've got to bring it every single night. And right now it looks like Bellevue West and Miller North are the 2 teams you have to contend with. And Central, that was a good win for the Eagles against Papio South. But their strongest teams, I think, come at the end of the year. I know they play Prep at the end and maybe Miller North back to back.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Talking about the Papio South girls, they've got an interesting dynamic. They're the Titans that they have several volleyball players on the basketball team, and you just don't really see that a lot
Sure.
these
That's
days
terrific.
because they're busy playing club volleyball. And I know a lot of basketball coaches would like to see that, but yeah, that's the positive. Unfortunately, there are some big club tournaments coming up, and so Papio South will be without a few of their key players, and they've got a really tough weekend coming up. They've got a game Friday night at Millard North, and they've got a game Saturday against Lincoln Northeast. And with not being at full strength, it's going to be really tough for the Titans. So we'll see if they can kind of hunker down and survive this weekend.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they're rolling. They after that 1-3 start, like I said, 6 in a row, and then they had those 2 overtime wins. And I thought it was funny what happened in one of those games. The official accidentally added an extra minute. He played
Yeah,
a college overtime.
kind of interesting that high school is 4 minutes. That's just sort of
Mhm.
a obtuse number. You think it would be five, but the officials erroneously put five on the clock when Central was playing Papio South for overtime, and Andy Gerlich's the Papio South coach said he was so busy coaching his team, he didn't even notice the 5 minutes. And they played for a little bit, and then he glanced up at the clock, and it still hadn't reached four. So he knew something was screwy there. And
Right.
I think the refs actually thought about taking a minute off to get them where they should have been, but they just let them play it out. And, really no harm, no foul. The Titans were ahead by 7 with still 1 minute left in overtime, and they hung on and won. So, yeah, that win over Central was one of the things that helped boost the Titans into that top 10 this week.
And then of course I
Where
got
was
him.
that game, Mike?
Where was it?
Yeah.
It was at the black hole of Papio South.
Sure enough.
Well, then he can only fault the scorekeeper or the scoreboard operator and the officials.
Yeah, I
And
I couldn't believe that somebody didn't catch that. But when the officials come over and put five on the clock, I mean, I guess you go along with that. But yeah, that was kind of unusual that somebody didn't catch that. So maybe even somebody from the Central side.
see, for the longest time, overtime was 4 minutes or 3 minutes in high school.
Hmm. Well,
I mean, that
maybe
was
maybe this will start a push toward 5 minutes. Who
There
knows?
you go. Yeah,
that's well, we're going to get shot clock, so
Yeah.
for everybody.
right.
Yep. One other team I wanted to mention, Dylan, was Lincoln North Star. They were another big mover this week.
Yeah.
The Navigators defeated Lincoln Northeast, and they're 9-2. And that's just kind of the crazy business going on down in Lincoln this year, where there's just several good teams, and you don't know who's going to beat who on any given week. And I mentioned Lincoln Southwest going to be playing at Millard West tonight. They're another team that's in that mix, but yeah, North Star really crashed the party, went from unranked to number 4. Papio South went from unranked to number 8. And Gretna East, we slipped them in at number 10. Again, in part, they also defeated Central. So the Griffins, in their very first season of play, crashing that top 10.
That's a heck of a story
Yep.
Really is.
because they look like they're very much a possibility to make state.
Yeah, oh, I
In
agree.
Class
And you
B.
look at their schedule, which is basically all Class A, and I mean their record is 8-5, but all 5 of those losses are against tough Class A teams. So you can't, as I wrote a week or two ago, don't sleep on Gretna East.
Yeah, good for the Griffins for sure. So,
I
no,
mean,
and
they're sitting 6th in the wild card,
yeah,
and that mean in Class B you don't have wild cards anymore. You get home games for the district finals, but yeah, given what's out there, and Class B is kind of thin overall, both boys and girls. Once you get past the top, you last time I remember well, I know the only first year new school ever to get to the state tournament was Omaha Northwest back in '72 when they were 10-10, kind of not even in the Metro Conference yet, and they made the Class A tourney.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be a similar feat if the Griffins could do that. And I'll be out there on Friday night to see that doubleheader because I've got Omaha Westview boys and Gretna East boys, both number 10 in their respective classes.
yeah, Westview is holding on there to that number 10 spot on your side of things, Stu. I had a quick note for you on your side of things. Elijah Gaith, big weekend in Chicago for the Miller North Mustangs. So they were playing without a shot clock over there then in Chicago. Is that
That's
right?
right. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, and they lost to the number 1 team in Illinois by 5,
Yeah,
which I think is a very good vindication for Nebraska basketball.
really
Uh,
is. Yeah,
and then they beat Chaminade out of St. Louis. That's like
yeah.
9-7. But a good weekend. We'll find out more about that probably tonight. And yeah, Elijah, who had struggled a little bit coming out of the holiday tourney, looks like he's got turned on, and when he's rolling with Derek Rollins and you get the Monster Boys hitting threes, they're very tough. But yeah, they're still sitting. They didn't get a chance to play Bellevue West the second time at Metro because they just went stone cold against Omaha Central in the quarters, and so we're knocked out at that point. But yeah, it looks like it's Bellevue West, Miller North. We'll see what Westside does at home tonight. Very tough place to play, and Miller North has had some interesting games. They're very close. I remember the year that I can't remember the kid's name that threw in the shot that went around the rim a couple times and knocked Hunter Salas and St. Thomas, that Miller North bunch, out when they were junior or sophomores from the state tourney. So there's been a little bit of a house of horrors there for Miller North at times. So I would think tonight the place is going to be rocking. Girls' game should be good too.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, we have about 10 games left before district play. So maybe next week we can kind of start talking about who's on the bubble, as far as the points
Getting the home
go.
games.
Yeah. So yeah, if we want to move on now to your reactions, Stu, of all classes kind of approving this shot clock, it looks like.
I didn't think it'd come in this fast, to be
Yeah.
honest. And again, I was not in the forefront initially for implementation, in part because I didn't. It is an expense, and you have to have competent people. It's as critical, if not more critical, than the scoreboard operator, because it changes possessions. So again, we've had a few issues around Omaha this year, mostly with Class A, and we know where those are. But Class B adopted it this year, and I think there was the latitude that if you were in tourneys with Class B, the lower classes could opt to use it. And I think people see the benefits of just a better flow game. We're still seeing some 29-25 games without the shot clock. It doesn't necessarily improve scoring, but it just makes it more aesthetically pleasing, I guess, which there's just a better flow to the game. And this is coming from the coaches, not necessarily the sports writers. What is still a little puzzling to me is I don't like the new N1s and the resetting of the team fouls after every quarter, because technically you can commit 16 fouls as a team and never put the other team on the foul line during a game. And I don't think that's
Yeah.
that's a lot of fouls to play with. And I think honestly it was to speed up the game. Like, where do we have to go? These games are, we're going to have games that take less than an hour. We're also charging people $7, $8 to come, and the game's over quickly. So I
Well,
don't know. That's
I think another part of it, Stu, and I saw a story about this, was that on the national front, people were the powers that be were sort of afraid that there was too much physical play inside when players were shooting the 1-and-1 and battling for rebounds. But I miss that, the drama of the 1-and-1, and especially late in games and things like that. But
I do too.
Getting back to the shot clock, I think I became team shot clock years ago when I was covering a game that was tied at the end of regulation, and one team won the tip, and they basically held the ball for almost the whole 4 minutes of overtime, and they took a shot and they missed it. So then they went to the second overtime and they did the same thing and they missed the shot. So then we went to the third overtime, won the tip, held it till the very end, and then they finally hit that last second shot. So that was kind of the game that I said, I'm not sure this is exactly right, but yeah, that kind of convinced me I wouldn't mind seeing a shot clock out there.
Yeah, we all have our little incident stories with certain coaches, but Yeah, no, I think it's good. It's as fast as anything's ever gone through the trickle down.
Yeah,
It took the wild card when we still had the wild card system and not the district final play in volleyball and basketball. It took forever for Class C and D to get into the wild card mode,
sure.
and this is gone and it's going to be in 3 years, and I think it's good. I again, I think there's some wiser minds out there now, and it basketball's we've got some numbers issues too. As far as
Mm,
you know, people want to score. Kids don't want to throw the ball around, pass it around, and lose the ball and have it go down the other way. But girls, you've got wrestling, which we'll touch on too after this.
yeah,
There's some defections from girls basketball to wrestling, but there's just not a lot of girls going out. I mean, the schools, the traditional basketball schools that don't have JV teams because they don't have enough numbers, like Beatrice and Fremont. That's just unthinkable that the
yeah.
Class A and Class B teams don't have enough depth to have a JV to get these girls that are down the line on the bench experience court time.
Yeah. Yep.
And I know the NSAA is concerned about that. I talked with John Dolliver on Saturday, and again, you've got the volleyball club season influence that also works against
It is
basketball.
tough. It is tough. Yeah. So if we want to segue into that, yeah, I think we have, did you say in your column over 1,800 girls that picked up the sport
Almost
of,
1800, about 1750.
yeah, almost 1,800 that picked up the sport of wrestling. And now another division is really badly needed. And just, so, yeah, if you just want to talk about what that's going to do to the
Well,
NCAA championships.
it's going to scrap the 3-day format at CHI, and there's a couple moving parts because the NSAA still has to ratify, the board has to ratify it in April, but that's a done deal. The contract with Mecca for CHI comes up for renewal this year, which it's just a matter of working out the terms and the availability of the arena for wrestling, because there's no other place to take state wrestling with all the ancillaries and the space and the outside the arena for warm-ups and the logistics and the officials rooms and all that, the locker rooms. So it's going to stay at CHI. No qualms there by anybody. And then do we have a separate 2-day tourney for girls and keep the 3 days for boys? Or if you can't get the arena because you're basically taking Creighton out of the arena for the entire week of
Yes.
state wrestling, if you do that would and this is the far more likely scenario, is that you'll have in 25 we'll have Class A and Class B boys with Class A girls on Wednesday and Thursday, and TV and the Parade of Champions on Thursday night for the finals, and then C and D boys and Class B girls, because the Class B girls would be a lot of those C and D boys schools
Yep.
funneling in. That would be Friday and Saturday again, Parade of Champions, finals, TV on Saturday. So NPM would be showing wrestling in 2 chunks rather than one. And then the following year, unlike track, which I'm still trying to get them to modify their thoughts, that the classes would switch, and Class A and Class B with girls A would be on the weekend,
Yep.
and the lead-in would be the C and D boys and the B girls, so that they would rotate that.
Yeah, that makes
Stu,
sense. And yeah, it does depend on Creighton's Big East schedule a little bit for sure, like you said. And I think what you mentioned there is true about all the logistics. I think state wrestling tournaments are a really unique event, sporting event, right? Because you have all these parents, all these kids showing up, but you really only have like what, like at the most 8 kids performing at one time on the mats.
Well, no,
And
you'd have 20.
okay, yeah.
You,
Yeah,
you,
oh yeah,
you
that's right.
bring
Yep.
in 10 mats
Bad,
early
bad math there.
in the and it's not the competition per se, it's the fan demand
Yes.
that is
Yeah.
necessitating this because you're already at capacity and now you're going to add another class with, well, let's see, 16 times 14, 224 more um, uh, competitors, girl wrestlers,
Sure.
224, what, minimum five family members, so
Yep.
now you got another 1,000 to fit in, plus your 224 girls competing. So there's another 1,200 you're trying to fit into a arena that's already jam-packed for the semis and the finals. So,
Yeah.
grandma and grandpa want to be in there. Aunt and uncle want to be in there.
That's right.
And it's, you know, how do you tell them no? So it's a interesting problem to have. I'm not even sure Iowa has this issue. On
Sure.
and I think what they've done is at least in the past, they've ran the girls on maybe Tuesday and Wednesday. It used to be just Wednesday, and I think they wrestled 3 matches. I think they were at 8. But Iowa also only has 3 classes of boys wrestling, and maybe we got to look at that too, because
Mhm.
Iowa's, and I've argued about this for years. Iowa's had much more wrestling tradition than Nebraska, and their 3 classes, when you win a state title in Iowa, you've done something. In Nebraska, it still seems like it's coronation time because the good wrestlers seldom want to face each other for a state title, so they go up or down in the
Right.
weight classes because you got so many weight classes in the middle to go up 5 pounds or down 5 pounds, and then you throw up with 4 classes instead of 3. It To me, it's not quite the same impact of a championship as it is in Iowa, and I don't know anybody who could argue against that.
Stu, I have a question for you. I've always heard that the girls' basketball numbers have kind of been hurt as far as more girls going out for volleyball because a lot of them didn't really like the physical contact involved in basketball. But how do you attribute just this explosion of numbers of girls wrestling? I mean, it's a sport that they didn't really grow up competing in, but yet here's 1,750 girls that are taking part in this relatively new sport.
You've seen more in the youth sector, in the youth clubs coming through, and you don't have many choices in winter. You've got basketball, you got bowling, which is a niche sport. By the way, you have Metro bowling on Wednesday and Friday, Mike. So
That's right.
you lace up your shoes.
I've heard
But
that.
you just don't have. It's not like fall where you've got volleyball and softball and girls golf and cross country. And I think these girls have been sitting idle, and I don't. I think it's more that there may be girls that don't like to run. Volleyball, it's not constant. I mean, you have a point, and then you have a little, gathering. You win the point, you lose the point, you get huddle up, and then you go back. So it's not like you're running up and down a court for 8 minutes at a time with a minute break and what have you. And I don't know. I think there's just a lot of factors working against girls basketball that I'm not sure you can readily rectify. And we may see more co-op teams, in the D schools because there's just not the numbers, and it is scary when you only have 11 girls out in a Class A or Class B program. I mean, and and again, that's good programs, consistent programs. It's not an Omaha Bryan that, hey, they've got 15 out this year trying to learn the game
Yeah.
and sticking with it.
Yeah, it really is a weird phenomenon because yeah, we've seen this explosion, but for years and years and years. Like you said, Stu, it really has just been basketball. So now I think it must
And I
just
don't know
be,
what else you put in there. I mean, what else do you put in the winter
yeah.
as a girls' sport?
And so it must just be something new to them that they want to try to do.
Hmm.
And
Well,
I think,
hey, there's scholarship money out there
yeah,
too.
yeah, that's a great point too. Yep.
Maybe we should start up varsity luge or something like that.
There you go. Bobsledding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bobsledding.
my late mother loved the luge and bobsledding, but I don't see where we could have a track here unless you converted like the slides at Funplex.
Yeah.
Go out to Mount Crescent and make a track out there or something.
I have no, that'd be what, a few $1 million to create a luge track?
No
Probably.
kidding.
Hey, I'm just thinking outside the box here. I
You
always
can't
like
cover it, by
I
the
always
way.
I always like the ski jumping. Remember that on Wide World of Sports? That was always a
Oh
fun.
yeah, the opener, the
Yep.
Yugoslavian
Yep.
thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And there's a generation that don't know what we're talking about, and they should, because Wide
Hmm.
World of Sports was just a great anthology. I mean, you'd get the Drake Relays and the World Powerlifting Championships with the Acapulco cliff diving,
Yep.
maybe in the same week.
I didn't think we were going to talk Winter Olympics and Wide World of Sports today, but here we are.
Well, there you go.
So, no, I think we can wrap it up for today, guys. Thank you for joining me again. And we'll be back next week. I think we're going to continue to talk about, well, we got a lot of state tournaments coming up, that's for sure, in the month of February. So, high school sports fans, stick with us, and we'll be back again on the Nebraska Prep Zone Report.